could have a greater impact on your life than anything else. It certainly did on mine. You receive a little goal card. This is where you sit down and write out what you want on a card. And then you carry it loose in your purse or your pocket. Now on one side we've got here, change is inevitable, but personal growth is a choice, and it is. Do you know that you could wander up and down the streets of any city, anywhere in the world, and ask one person after another, what is their goal? And they'll look at you, and odds are pretty good they'll say, what do you mean? Yet, if by chance you find someone that has a clearly defined goal, ask if they've got it in writing. And again, odds are pretty good they won't. If you decide what you want, and you write it on the card, and you carry it with you, I guarantee you it must happen. It absolutely must happen in your life. Now, why do we have goals? See, the average individual would say we have a goal to get more. You know, get a better house, get a bigger house, get a boat, get more money. No. That may be a result of the goal. You may, accumulate more in your life and nicer and better things. But the real purpose of a goal is to grow. It causes you to draw something out of yourself that you didn't even know was there. Now, when we set a goal, we're going after something we want. And if you know how to reach it, it's the wrong goal. Now, that probably sounds pretty silly. When you set a goal, you're going after something you want. And if you know how to reach it, it's probably the wrong goal. You're going sideways. I always mention that goals fall into three categories. I refer to it as A, B, and C. A-type goals are doing something you already know how to do. And I use an example in a program that I wrote about a young man that came to me and he asked me if I'd talk to him about his goal. And I said, sure, what's your goal? He said, I want to get a new car. And I said, well, that's okay. I said, what kind of a car do you want? He said, a new Pontiac. I said, well, Pontiac's a nice car. I've had a Pontiac. And I said, what are you driving now? And he said, a Pontiac. Really? I said, how long have you had it? And he said, 4 years. I said, how old's the Pontiac? He said, 4 years old. And I said, then what you're telling me is that you have had a new Pontiac that you bought 4 years ago. You bought it new. He said, that's right. And I said, that's not a good goal, because you've known for 4 years how to do that. There's going to be no growth attached to it. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't get a new Pontiac, but it would not constitute a goal. A goal is something that you're going to go after you've never done before. Now, when people move away from A-type goals, they generally go to B-type goals. And that's where they sit down and they gather all the information they've got, all the resources they've got, and they say, if all these things happen, then I could accomplish this. And they make a plan. They've got an absolutely beautiful plan. They've got the plan, and if all these things happen, then I can accomplish this. This is what they think they can do. You see, the A-type is what they know they can do. B is what they think they can do. Now, do you know that there's no inspiration in going after something like that? Absolutely none. And if you're going to really accomplish something, you're going to have to be inspired. You're going to have to pull on something that you haven't pulled on before. I mean, it's going to have to come from inside. See, people go after B-type goals, they get going, and they get bored, they're not inspired, and so they quit, they give up. Now, the C-type goal is wants. And what you want, I'm talking about what you really want. Most people say, I don't know what I want. I don't believe that. I think you do know what you want. I think you're rejecting it before you give it any serious thought. To decide what you want, you've got to sit down and totally relax. And then you have to let your imagination wander. When you're going after wants, you're dealing with fantasy. See, the one, you're going after what you know. The other one, you're going after what you think you can do. And the wants is fantasy. Now, we have been conditioned as kids that fantasy is just for little kids. You don't fantasize. You've got to know how things are going to happen. But you see, you and I are the only creature on the planet, so far as we know, that can fantasize. Ed Hillary fantasized that he would stand on top of the world and he climbed Mount Everest. The Wright brothers, a couple ordinary bicycle mechanics, they fantasized they'd introduce us to a new kingdom, and they did. Now think of this for a moment. What do you fantasize? See, as a little kid, you could fantasize, and your mother and dad let you do that because it got you out under their feet. You'd sit down in front of the kitchen cupboards with pots and pans, and God knows only what you did with it. But then you went to school. Bob, pay attention. You see, your mind's wandering. Will you quit looking out the window and listen to what I'm telling you? And you see, we get punished, and pretty soon we stop fantasizing. We put our imagination away, and we stop using it. Do you know, Napoleon Hill said the imagination is the most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force the world has ever known. Don't you find it strange that we have great, huge companies, big multinationals, with small creative departments? We have people wandering around and say, well, I'm not really creative. Writers are creative, musicians are, but I'm really not creative. Everyone is creative. Creativity comes from the root creator, which is within. Everybody's creative. It's a matter, are you expressing your creativity? Well, don't let people steal your dream. When you sit down and decide what you want, you won't know how you're going to get it. The fun is in finding out how you're going to do it. When I set a goal, if it doesn't sort of scare me, I know I'm on the wrong track. See, if you know how you do it, you're going to go sideways. You've got to build a fantasy. You take the fantasy and you move it from fantasy to a theory. You keep playing with it. And you go from fantasy to a theory, and you take and you build an image, and just follow the pyramid that we've got here for you. And you turn it into a theory. Now that is when we're giving our fantasy some serious consideration. We're starting to use our reasoning mind, and we're starting to give this some serious thought. Now, before we can turn the theory into a goal, we have to ask ourselves a couple of things. Am I able to do this? Am I able? Well, if we believe everything we've been taught by both science and theology, the only two sources of reference we have to go to, we have deep reservoirs of talent. We have infinite potential. Absolutely, I'm able. I don't know how, but I'm able. The second question we have to ask, am I willing? Am I willing to pay the price? Am I willing to do what I have to do to get to where I'm going? See, Ed Hillary had to go to Nepal in 1951, in 1952, and 1953. No one had ever been to the top of Mount Everest. Everyone in the world told him it couldn't be done. Anybody that tried died. But he kept going back. He was willing to do whatever was required, and he got to the top of that mountain. Have you any idea how those two young bicycle mechanics, the Wright brothers, were ridiculed? Told to quit wasting time? Have you any idea how many times people laughed at Edison when he said what he was going to do? He was going to